Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is my video on why the TLR-7 is not a duty light. This video, of course, was originally released on Patreon. You guys are getting it here on YouTube. I'm pretty much Patreon exclusive these days, but I still release the occasional video here on YouTube, and I wanted to put this one out specifically because I wanted to reach a wider audience with kind of a PSA, if you will. There is this dangerous trend of the TLR-7 being used on duty carry weapon lights, or duty carry handguns, I should say, as a weapon light. For concealed carry, it's great. I'll talk a lot about that in the video. But as a duty light, kind of a no-go. So let's check it out. This is the TLR-7A from Streamlight. A couple different variations of it. Some are SIG specific. Most of them are universal or Glock specific. And one of the appeals of this light is the fact that it is compact. And I can totally appreciate that. I'm not saying that this is not a light that you shouldn't put on your carry gun. In fact, one of my carry guns, and I only have a couple, has one right there. That's the sub model, which is available for the SIG P365, and I do carry a P365 when I cannot carry my normal full size. And it's a great light for what it is. It has some really impressive output for what it is. However, what it isn't is a duty light. And what I mean by that is it doesn't really have a place on a gun that's going to be used for uniform purposes. So this is kind of geared for my law enforcement Patreons. One of the things that I've been encountering in my low-light instructor classes and in some of my low-light classes is officers who are issued for duty carry one of these lights. Officers that serve in patrol or SWAT or some kind of not detective type role. For concealed carry, great light. For recon or reconnaissance or narcotics or any time where you're going to have to do concealment, deep concealment, this light makes a lot of sense, and I would highly recommend that you put it on your gun. However, there's a troubling trend in people being issued this light for patrol, for SWAT, for things like that. And the biggest problem at the outset of it is this light just does not have the horsepower to perform with your full-size lights. That's a problem. It's a problem because the light is on the gun, because you have a reasonable expectation to need light while you're using the firearm. It's there for that reason. So people are marrying this light to the gun for what I can only assume is purely cosmetic reasons. If you're carrying in a duty holster, a duty belt, some kind of war belt or whatever you want to call it, Sam Brown, patent leather, FTX, whatever your gear is, and you're carrying this light, it doesn't really do anything for you other than take away some of your possible, as I say, horsepower. If we compare it, and I don't normally do comparisons, and this wouldn't be a direct comparison anyway, but Surefire's latest light, the X300 Turbo, there's a significant difference in performance between the two lights, and this light seems to have more of a home on a duty carry gun. It serves more of a purpose. You don't necessarily have to worry about concealment as much, although I'll make the argument for most body types, you can still conceal a full-size light even on a compact gun. I mean, if we just look at the numbers, the TLR-7A is producing 500 lumens, which is good, but it's only putting out 5,000 candela, which is not good. I know that sounds like a big number, but in terms of candela, that's not impressive at all, especially when we look at what your full-size duty light, in this situation, we're using the X300 Turbo, which is Surefire's latest duty light. It's putting out 66,000 candela. And you can see a distinct difference in performance in what I'm showing you. And the biggest issue here is positive identification. On a sterile range where there's no ambient lighting, the TLR-7A is going to perform fine until you get back to 20, 25 yards, which are those are less likely but still possible distances. Once we introduce more realistic ambient, urban, semi-urban, even some rural lighting or incidental lighting like a traffic stop on a dark road, even tail lights can obfuscate your ability to positively identify your target. Headlights definitely will. So if I'm using this light for a commonality of tasks. So say I work patrol at night and I get issued this light. My first question would be like, y'all got a bigger light? Because if I need to point a gun at somebody, I need more horsepower. Lights are supposed to replace the sun. And I don't mean like in the eldritch sense of going to cause some unknowable destructive damage or institute some kind of burning or anything like that. I mean literally the sun is what we're most used to. During the day you see fine, high color, contrast, clarity, everything's good, depth perception, everything's good. As soon as it gets dark, our diurnal asses can't see very well at all. We can make out movement and shades of black and gray, and that's pretty much it. So we invented flashlights to overcome that problem. And then we fast forward to where the technology kept improving and improving and getting so small and so great, and now we're regressing in a way because of some cosmetic desire, or for some people, a legitimate concealment concern, which goes back to my point. If it is actually going to be carry concealed, you are doing a risk versus reward type of situation. If it's carried in a exposed or an outboard or an open carry duty holster, I don't see any value whatsoever in going with some light like this. A recent class I taught, instructor level class I taught for low light out in Oklahoma, I had a number of officers from the same department that were all using this light, and they didn't like it. On the outset, they didn't like it. And I ended up writing a justification for basically explaining why the TLR-7A was not a good light for them to be using. During the class, portions of the class, we introduced those ambient lighting. I backlight targets, I put light between you and the target, simulate headlights and things like that. And they were struggling to get positive identification. Sure, they could see the silhouette of the target, but the point especially in low light shooting, isn't necessarily to be able to hit the target. It's to be able to recognize if you should be shooting at it. So when you introduce that realism of not only do I have to see and recognize that's my silhouette, but does it have a weapon? Is it my threat? That's where this light significantly fails. The biggest issue with the technology is the fact that in order to make a light that sits this compact and this flush, you have to reduce the depth of the reflector. And once you reduce the depth of the reflector, you lose horsepower. That's where your candela comes from. Well, a lot of it comes from. And there's a lot more science that goes into that we won't necessarily get into. But this gun is nice and cute and flush and cosmetically appealing. And these lights look great on Glock 19s if you're really into that bulldog front flush look. However, you're giving up a lot, and really what you're gaining, if you're carrying in a duty holster anyway, is the look. You're not gaining anything else. From concealment, as I've already said, I think this will be the third time, it does make sense. So if you're watching this video and you're not law enforcement and you don't open carry and you don't worry about things like this video isn't necessarily targeted towards you. This is more of a PSA to those people who do carry for those more occupational type roles in an outboard or in open carry duty holster type situation. If you're a detective, plainclothes, narcotics, reconnaissance, whatever, recon, whatever you guys call it, go with God, go ahead and use this light if you need to because of concealment concerns, especially deep concealment concerns, if you need to do the UC thing. But outside of that, I don't see any reason to put this light on a gun for a duty purpose. Now, for concealed carry, fantastic. But remember, there is a risk versus reward there. I think sometimes we get into these contrarian conversations in the gun culture. Still, I wish I could call it a community, but it's kind of hard to because we just seem to argue with each other constantly. I guess sports is like that too, though. But anyway, so we get into this conversation about less. And people start reducing the amount of stuff they carry, which I think is reasonable and prudent based on, your lifestyle. You don't necessarily, I don't want to predict the future, but you're highly unlikely to need 3 spare magazines. Although if you did need 3 spare magazines, you'd be glad you had them. But I think people have to think about most likely to least likely, their lifestyle, their occupation, and they have to factor their carry gear into that. So maybe this light plays into that fact, but you are having to knowledgeably give up some of the performance. Now, some people will advocate no light at all, let's run a handheld. That's a type of separate discussion. I've done a video on that, and I'll probably visit it again just with you guys so we can have a more intelligent conversation about it. Because you post something like that on YouTube, and you get all the people who are really good at predicting the future, and they come up with the excuses for why it doesn't make any sense, but they don't look at the other side of the situation at all. Guns get lights because gun gets sights. So if this is the only light that you can fit on your gun, awesome. If this is the only light that you can fit based on your body type and your needs for concealment, awesome. Like I said, I use it too. But if you're carrying in a duty role, just go ahead and get a full-size light for your full-size or your compact gun. And there you have it. If you're interested in staying current on the latest Sage Dynamics videos, you can head over to patreon.com/Sage Dynamics and become a supporter, where I'm going to release videos you'll never see here. And that's just the way it works now. And hopefully you'll come over and become a supporter. If not, you'll still get the occasional, maybe once a month, maybe once every other month YouTube video. Till next time, everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.